Hello, welcome to this very first lesson in watercolour for the absolute beginners. Now, if you're a seasoned watercolour artist and you have a look at this lesson, you're going to be very disappointed. You'll say, I know how to do that, this guy's trying to teach me how to suck eggs. So this lesson is it's solely for people who are only very first starting with watercolours, and they're wondering where to go, what to do, what kind of stuff to use and how to use it. So firstly, let me get into it about the paper. We've got different kinds of paper on the market. This is just a book of cartridge paper, and it's very thin and it's very flimsy. And the thing is with cartridge paper, although it's great for doing drawings, it's brilliant for drawing, but for when you do painting, it sits on top. You see that? The paint just sits on top, and eventually it can buckle your cartridge paper and you won't get the right effect from cartridge paper. So you'll only be disappointed and you'll end up throwing your paints in the drawer and you'll say, I'm never going to do that again. And it will spoil a lifetime of wonderful watercolour opportunities for you. So cartridge paper is great for drawing, not for watercolour papering. Now then, we've got different watercolour papers out there. You get some cheap and cheerful ones. This one here is a nice and cheap one from W.H. Smith. It's great, does the job. This is what you're looking for, this little number there. It says 300 GSM, and that's the paper weight. And I'm not going to go into the science of it, but that is what you're looking for, okay? So, that is a little bit better. Yeah, so now let's see the difference. We'll put the same kind of colour on here. And that sits a little bit better. But this is cheap paper. It's great for practicing now. If you want something a little bit more substantial, you go for the more expensive stuff like this. This is Bockingford. Yeah, same thing, 300 GSM. That's what we're looking for. So let's go for a Bockingford paper, same effect. And let's see, you see the difference there. It blends in beautifully. There is massive difference. And you can put rich washes on that because it's got a good weight to it. So let's just review those. So the first one was the cartridge paper. And you can see how it just sits on top and it's not very good, it's a bit disappointing. The next one is your cheap and cheerful one there, and that's nice for doing your practice on. The next one is what we've just done, and that's got a lovely effect on that. And you can get papers in what you call rough, smooth, you can get things not or cold press or rough or extra rough. This is the different weights as well. This is the one that I like to use a lot of the time, and this is Bockingford again, and this is a little bit heavier. Really, it's like card. It's like it really is like card, and that's 420 GSM. That's really thick, but it holds well. I'll just show you a little bit on there. You see that now, and it's got a lovely rough texture to it. There you go. Now, as you can see, there's very little difference between that and that. But I find this holds well. it won't bend at all. So that's your papers. If you're practicing, go for your cheaper ones, but make sure it's 300 GSM. Right, the next thing I'll want to talk to you about is the your watercolour paints. Now I have a nice little palette there that I just feed into regularly, and I have tubes and I squeeze them out into there, and it's great. These are the little tubes that you can buy, these little tubes, and I often, you can get them in different sizes. That's a bigger size than that one there, and that's a 10mm. I think that was a 5mm. Yeah, and you just squeeze them out and it keeps you going. The other thing you can go for is just plain old pans. These are full pan size there. That's what you call a full pan size. You can get half pans, which are that's a half pan there. See that small one? Half pan, full pan. That's it. The choice is yours. You might get, if you get a Cotman, that's a beginner's, that's a nice student one, and that's fine, absolutely fine and dandy to work with. It's just a cheaper end of the scale. There's really no need to go for anything too expensive. Okay, so that's the colours sorted out. There are different colours out there. You can got Daniel Smith. These are Daniel Smith paints. I use those quite a lot. You got these Senelia. I use those a lot. And you got Winsor & Newton. That's Winsor & Newton. I use that a lot. You got De La Rone, and I would probably stick to one of those if I were you. Anyway, so that's the tubes and the pans. Next thing I want to talk about is the brushes that we can use. We've got a mop brush, we've got a fan brush, we've got a round brush, we've got a rigger brush, and we have a flat brush. We also have what you call a little detailer brush as well if you want, and we also have what you call a filbert. Now these brushes are all great and they're all used for different methods and different techniques. I'm not going to go into every single one of those now, but what we'll do in each lesson, we'll probably concentrate on one brush or maybe two to get a certain effect. So that's it really. I don't want to go into anything too deep in this lesson, but that's just to get the basics of that. Right, we'll come back in a bit with a little bit of painting. Come back. Firstly, when we're painting, it's always a good idea to tape your painting down to a hard board or a firm surface. I use the tape along the edges, just leave a little line there, and I use a very low tack tape. For this weighted board I probably don't need to go all the way around the edges, but this is just for your benefit, that you would paint, that you would tape your work down. Always do that. So next thing we're going to do is just have a look at a couple of washes, a look at a couple of splashes of paint. I'm going to use this, the first set I'm going to use this mop brush. Now this mop brush it's a nice brush, it's a Da Vinci. I'll put all the details of the brushes that I use on my website, but this is a Da Vinci, and it's got a lovely fine tip to it, and it's very thick, so it holds a lot of water and a lot of colour. So now what I'm going to do is just get a palette full of colour, one palette full of colour. There we go, just do this, and always put your paper at an angle. This is about 25 to 30 degrees. So I'm going to just a simple wash there. Now that is what you call a flat wash, and it should all dry around about the same tone all over that. Now then, if you've got this and this thing at the bottom there, that's what you call a well or a bead of colour. But what I like to do is this bead is very, very useful. And very helpful when you're doing large paintings. But once you know it's done its job, you can get yourself a damp brush. It's just damp, and you just squidge it off with a handkerchief. Just wipe the edges, give it a squeeze out and wipe the edges so it's still damp to the touch, but it acts as a magnet, and as you go along the bottom of that bead, it will lift it all out for you like a little magnet. Okay, so that's that. That's nice and simple. You can practice a few of those squares, or put them in a circle in your own time. Next thing I want to do, just using this one colour at the moment, to show you the different strokes that you can make with this mop brush. You can do really fine strokes. You can get a bit of thicker, more neater pigment. There you go. Now if you want light strokes, you just add water to your mixture in your well, and it'll be a little bit finer when it dries. See there? See how fine that is compared to the one at the top. And what you should always keep in mind is, whatever you paint, it will dry about 30% lighter. Now then, this colour there, we can actually add a little bit of a different colour to the bottom. I'm going to add a little bit of a colour which is called Payne's Grey. I'm just going to add it to the bottom there. And you all can only do that when this paint is damp. If you were to try and go ahead and do it while it's dry, watch this, it'll have a harsh line there. See that harsh line? And if that's what we wanted, that's great. But if we want this soft line, you have to make sure that your paint is still damp. This paint here, let's see how damp that is. That is still a little bit damp. It's on its way, yeah? But because it's on its way, we can still work with it. So there you go. You've added a nice graduated wash, and that's quite a harsh wash on a flat background. As you can see there, we've got thin lines, thin brush strokes. I'll do some more under here with the thin end of the paintbrush. If you want some thicker, you press down, like that, and it's all with the same brush. Now, let's see how, you see how that, I'll just show you with this, but this is a different brush, but it's just a round brush. So I'm just going to, it was wet, we've just rinsed that in the water, going to squeeze it off with a handkerchief, and because it's still quite damp, it'll act as a magnet, and we'll just go along there and lift that extra bead out. So you'll have a nice blend there. So it blends down from that colour to this colour. That's called a graduated wash or a gradiated wash. Depends which part of the world you're from. So we've had a flat wash and a graduated wash, and we've got some lines there, nice and simple. That's with that brush. Let's go to that big thick brush again. Big thick brush, lines, press down for a thicker line, press down, thicker line, nice and simple. Press down, thicker line, thin line, just a tip, and I try and keep my little pinky finger there resting, and that gives me a guide so I can get closer and closer all the way until it is just touching, see, and a little bit more, and that little pinky finger will be a little help to me, a little guide. So, nice and simple, a very simple start. So, before you get to the next lesson, I want you to practice these little things that we've done, just with either a big mop brush, or you can use, if you've got another brush which is a little bit thicker, a size 12 round or something, try it with that. But I would encourage you to try and get yourself a decent thick mop brush from somewhere. There's plenty of places to sell them. So I'll see you on the next lesson.